Tessa sat alone at the big dining table. The food in front of her was cold. She had been waiting for hours. The city lights glowed through the glass windows, but the room felt empty. The door opened. Adrian walked in, still in his suit. He smelled of perfume, not hers. His face was calm, almost cold. Without even taking off his coat, he threw a stack of papers onto the table. Adrian, sign them. Tessa, frowning, what is this? Adrian. Divorce papers. The words hit her like ice. Her hands shook as she picked up the papers. She read through them quickly, her eyes filling with tears. There was no warning, no reason, just legal words ending her marriage. Tessa, softly. Adrian, why? Adrian, coldly, because you're boring, Tessa. You've become nothing. I built you and now I'm done. Sign them. You're nothing without me. Her heart broke with every word. He turned to leave, his shoes echoing on the marble floor. Tessa, whispering, does she make you happy? Adrian, smirking, she makes me feel alive. He walked out and slammed the door behind him. For a long moment, there was silence. Then a soft knock on the door. Tessa wiped her tears and looked up as a man in a suit stepped in, a lawyer. He carried a small sealed envelope. Lawyer. Mrs. Moore, Mr. Moore asked me to stay until you sign. But your father left something for you before he passed away. He told me to deliver it if this day ever came. Tessa froze. Her father? The man who died years ago with nothing? Her mind spun with confusion. She slowly opened the envelope. Inside were several papers and a letter with her father's handwriting. Her breath caught as she read the first few lines. Her eyes widened. Whatever she saw changed everything. The room felt different now. Heavy, charged with new energy. Tessa looked up from the letter, her tears drying on her cheeks. The pain in her eyes began to shift into something else, strength. Cut to black. Tessa was once a rising interior designer in Lagos, full of ideas, passion, and energy. She loved her work and dreamed of opening her own design firm one day. People admired her creativity, her warmth, and how she could turn any simple space into something beautiful. Then she met Adrian Moore, a charming, confident businessman who seemed perfect. He was rich, well-known, and carried himself like someone who could make anything happen. When he noticed Tessa's work at an event, he showered her with attention. He said she was special, that she deserved the world. It all felt like a dream. Within months, they were married. Tessa thought she had found love, someone who believed in her. But soon, the dream started to change. After the wedding, Adrian began suggesting that she stop working. You don't need to work anymore, Tess, he said with a smile. Focus on our home. I'll take care of everything. At first it sounded sweet, caring even. But soon, it became clear that it was not love. It was control. One by one he made her cut ties with people. He said her friends were a bad influence. He handled all the money, telling her it was for her own good. He criticized her clothes, her cooking, even how she spoke. Slowly the confident, happy woman Tessa once was began to fade away. Adrian's mother, Mrs. Brooks, only made things worse. She never accepted Tessa. She often reminded her that she married up and should be grateful. Whenever Tessa tried to speak at family dinners, Mrs. Brooks would interrupt or ignore her. You're lucky my son chose you, Mrs. Brooks would say. Women like you don't get men like him every day. Behind closed doors, Adrian's kind face disappeared. He would shout at Tessa over small things. If she cried, he called her weak. If she tried to explain, he told her to shut up. He laughed at her dreams, saying things like, designing rooms? That's not real work. You'd be nothing without me. Every word chipped away at her spirit. The only person who stayed by Tessa's side was Kayla, her best friend from university. Kayla had become a successful lawyer. She often called to check on Tessa and tried to remind her who she used to be. Kayla, you think you're in love, Tess, but he's building a cage, and you're too kind to see it. Tessa always defended him. She said he was just stressed, that he loved her deep down. But inside, she knew Kayla was right. Meanwhile, Adrian's business empire kept growing. His company, Moore Holdings, was everywhere: real estate, design, investment. Ironically, many of his ideas came from Tessa. She had a good eye for design and often gave him advice, helping him impress investors. But he never once gave her credit. The only person who seemed to notice her value was David, Adrian's quiet business partner. David was respectful and kind. He always treated Tessa with warmth, unlike Adrian. One evening, during a company dinner, David leaned closer and said softly, "If Adrian ever forgets your worth, remind him who you were before him." Tessa smiled weakly, but she didn't believe she could. The strong, creative woman she once was now lived only in her memories. At home, the silence grew heavier each night. Tessa would sit by the window, staring at the city lights, wondering where her life went wrong. She missed her work, her laughter, her freedom. Adrian no longer even looked at her the same way. He was always on his phone, always busy, always distant. She tried to talk to him, to fix things, but he brushed her off. "You're too emotional, Tessa. That's your problem," he said once, walking away. Her world had become small, just the walls of their penthouse and the echo of his anger. But deep inside, a quiet part of her still hoped for change, still believed that maybe he would see her again. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The night Adrian threw those divorce papers on the table was not the end of her story. It was the beginning. For the first time in years, she would be forced to remember who she really was. The day after the painful night, Tessa met Kayla at a quiet cafe. She looked pale, her eyes red from crying. She hadn't slept. Her hands shook slightly as she held a brown envelope, the same one the lawyer had given her. Kayla reached across the table, worried. "Kayla. Tess, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's in there?" Tessa slowly opened the envelope. Inside were two things, a folded letter and a set of legal papers. She handed the letter to Kayla. The letter was from Tessa's late father, the man she thought had died poor and forgotten. His handwriting was shaky but full of emotion. He wrote about how sorry he was for leaving Tessa and her mother years ago. He said he had made mistakes but wanted to protect her, even after death. At the bottom of the letter, he mentioned a surprise, something he had arranged long ago in case her husband ever betrayed her. Kayla looked confused and picked up the second document. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Kayla. Tess, this says your father owned shares in more holdings, 30%, and he transferred them to you." Tessa froze. "Tessa, that can't be right. Adrian never told me my father had anything to do with his company." Kayla, quietly, "That's because he didn't want you to know. This document is real, Tess. You're a legal owner. 30%. Tessa stared at the papers, her heart racing. Her father had seen something coming. He had known Adrian would hurt her one day, and had made sure she would not be left powerless. For the first time in years, Tessa felt something new, strength. But while she was discovering the truth, Adrian was getting bolder. He had already started appearing at events with his new girlfriend, Nina, a young and flashy socialite. Photos of them together spread across social media. He didn't even try to hide it. He wanted to embarrass Tessa publicly. Adrian called her 2 days later. His tone was cold and demanding. "Adrian, come to my office tomorrow. Let's finish this. I want those papers signed in front of everyone so there's no drama." Tessa said nothing. She simply agreed to meet him. The next day, she walked into his large office. Adrian was waiting with his mother, Mrs. Brooks, and his lawyer. He looked smug, confident, as if he had already won. He slid the divorce papers across the table. "Adrian, sign them, Tessa. Let's make this clean and simple." Tessa looked at the papers, then back at him. Her hands were steady this time. Tessa, calmly, "Oh, I'll sign them after we talk business." Adrian laughed, mocking her. "Adrian, business? You have no business here, Tessa. You were just a housewife." She smiled slightly, then placed the document from her father on the table. "Tessa, that's funny, Adrian. Because according to this, I own 30% of this company." The room went silent. Mrs. Brooks gasped. The lawyer blinked in confusion. Adrian's smile disappeared instantly. "Adrian, what are you talking about?" Tessa stood tall, her voice calm but firm. "Tessa, my late father was one of your first investors. You never paid him back. Before he died, he transferred his shares to me." Adrian snatched the papers from her hands and looked at them, his face turning pale. It was all real, legal, stamped and signed years ago. He looked at her, anger and fear mixing in his eyes. "Adrian, you planned this?" Tessa softly, "No. My father did. He wanted to make sure I wouldn't be left with nothing." Mrs. Brooks stood up, shocked. "Mrs. Brooks, this can't be true. My son built this company." Tessa looked her in the eye. Tessa. Not alone. My father helped him. And now his part belongs to me. Adrian clenched his jaw, his face burning with humiliation. The powerful man who once controlled everything had just been outsmarted by the woman he called nothing. Tessa turned to leave, her steps calm and steady. For the first time, Adrian was the one left speechless, and the tables had finally turned as he tried to intimidate her, standing close, his voice low and angry. But this time Tessa didn't flinch. Her calmness made him nervous. It was something he had never seen before. Adrian shouting, "You're bluffing." Tessa quietly, "Then sue me." He froze. The confidence in her voice shook him more than any threat could. That same week, Kayla stepped in as Tessa's lawyer. She quickly filed legal papers to freeze all company assets connected to Adrian until the ownership issue was settled. It meant Adrian couldn't touch his money without permission from the court. Adrian exploded when he heard the news. He shouted at everyone, his lawyers, his employees, even his mother. Mrs. Brooks, furious and humiliated, stormed into Tessa's home one morning. "Mrs. Brooks. You ungrateful girl. You think this makes you powerful? You've ruined my son's life." Tessa calmly, "No, Mrs. Brooks. This doesn't make me powerful. It just makes me equal." Mrs. Brooks was speechless. She had always seen Tessa as weak, but the woman standing before her was different. Strong, steady, and unafraid. Behind the scenes, Adrian began his dirty games. He used his connections to spread rumors. He told people that Tessa had forged documents, that she was lying about the shares, that she was trying to destroy his company out of revenge. Some of the media picked it up, and suddenly Tessa's name was everywhere. But Tessa didn't fight with anger. She used her mind. Quietly, she gathered proof. She worked with Kayla and found old company records, emails, and contracts that showed her father's money had helped Adrian start more holdings years ago. David, Adrian's business partner, started to see the truth. He visited Tessa one evening and offered his help. "David. He's desperate. But you have something he doesn't. The truth. I'll help you navigate the board." Together, they began to plan carefully. David taught her how board meetings worked, how to read financial statements, and how to protect herself from Adrian's tricks. For the first time, Tessa stepped into a world she had once been shut out of. In the next board meeting, Adrian tried to act confident. The room was full of investors and senior managers. He smiled coldly as Tessa walked in, but deep down he was tense. "Adrian, we're here today to discuss the issue of forged ownership claims made by Mrs. Tessa Moore." Tessa looked at him calmly and opened a folder. "Tessa, before we start, I'd like to share something with the board." She handed out copies of several old emails and bank records. The documents showed that her father's money had been used as part of Adrian's original startup funds. Money Adrian never repaid. "Tessa, my father believed in Adrian's dream. He helped him build this company. These records show every payment, every agreement. That investment gave my father ownership, and those shares are now mine." The boardroom went silent. One of the investors looked shocked. "Investor, these records are real. Adrian, why didn't we know about this?" Adrian's face turned pale. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Adrian, she's twisting the facts. She stole those documents. Tessa, they were given to me legally by my father's lawyer. Everything is signed and verified." Everyone could see she was telling the truth. Mrs. Brooks, sitting in the corner, covered her mouth in disbelief. The woman she once mocked had just destroyed her son's arrogance with calm, clear evidence. After the meeting, news spread fast. People began to talk, not about Adrian's success, but about how Tessa's father had helped him build his empire. Reporters started calling it the Moore Holdings scandal. Adrian's investors began pulling away, afraid of losing their money. Adrian tried harder to destroy Tessa's image. He hired people to dig up dirt on her, but there was nothing to find. She had no scandals, no secrets, only the truth on her side. Tessa continued to rise. She started attending meetings regularly, learning fast. Her ideas were sharp and creative, just like before her marriage. Even the board members began to respect her. David stood by her as an ally, not as a savior. He admired her strength, but never crossed the line. Their connection grew, not from romance, but from mutual respect. "David, you've changed, Tessa." "Tessa, maybe. Or maybe I just remembered who I was before him." Meanwhile, Adrian's confidence crumbled. The once proud businessman now struggled to keep his company from falling apart. Every move he made only made him look guiltier. In another board meeting, he tried to rally the team against Tessa. Adrian. She's trying to destroy me. You all know who built this company. But Tessa didn't even raise her voice. She simply stood and spoke clearly. Tessa. No. Adrian. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm just taking back what was always rightfully mine. She handed another file to the board, this time showing proof that Adrian had secretly moved company funds into his personal accounts. The room went silent again. The investors exchanged worried looks. David leaned forward, staring at Adrian. David. You use company money for personal gain. That's fraud. Adrian's mouth opened, but no words came out. His empire, the thing he had used to control and belittle Tessa, was now collapsing in front of him. As she left the room, Tessa didn't smile or gloat. She simply walked out with quiet dignity. She had finally learned that strength wasn't about shouting or fighting, it was about standing firm in truth. And for the first time in years, Adrian Moore had no control over her. Adrian cornered Tessa in their penthouse late at night. His calm, charming mask was gone. His face twisted with anger and fear. Papers were scattered across the table, proof of everything he had done wrong. He slammed his fist on the table, making Tessa flinch. Adrian shouting, You think you've won? You're nothing without me. Tessa stood still, her eyes steady. Tessa, that's what you said the night you gave me those divorce papers. But now everyone knows who really built you. Adrian's breathing grew heavy. His pride couldn't handle her calmness, her power, her refusal to be afraid. Adrian, you ruined everything. You embarrassed me in front of the whole city. Tessa. No, Adrian. You did that to yourself. He suddenly lunged toward her, his hand raised in anger. But before he could reach her, the door burst open. David and Kayla stepped inside, followed by 2 police officers. Kayla. Adrian Moore, you're under arrest for forgery and financial fraud. Adrian froze, his mouth opening in shock. Adrian. What? This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything. David walked forward, holding a folder of documents. David. You used company funds to move money into secret offshore accounts. We traced everything. It's over, Adrian. The police stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. Adrian tried to resist, shouting angrily. Adrian. You can't do this. I built this company. I made everything. Tessa, quietly, and you destroyed it with your greed. The officers pulled his hands behind his back. Mrs. Brooks appeared at the doorway, crying and begging the police to stop, but it was too late. Adrian's empire, and his freedom, were gone. As the officers led him away, he turned one last time to glare at Tessa. Adrian. You'll regret this. Tessa. No. Adrian. I'll finally sleep in peace. When the door closed, the room fell silent. Tessa stood still, trying to catch her breath. David gently placed a hand on her shoulder, but she shook her head, trying to hold back tears. Kayla stepped forward and handed her something. The same envelope from months ago. Kayla. Tess, there's something else you should know. The lawyer who gave you this. He wasn't just any lawyer. Tessa looked up, confused. Tessa. What do you mean? At that moment, the lawyer from that night entered the room. His expression was calm but kind. Lawyer. Your father and I were close friends. He trusted me. Before he died, he told me that I should give you those documents only if Adrian ever tried to divorce you. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. Tessa, so he knew. Lawyer. Yes. He knew Adrian might betray you. He wanted to make sure you would only receive your shares once you saw Adrian's true nature. Tessa covered her mouth with her hand. Lawyer, softly. Your father said you had to see who Adrian truly was before you could see who you truly are. Those words broke something inside her. Tears streamed down her face. All the pain, the fear, the humiliation, everything she had carried for years, came pouring out. Kayla hugged her tightly, whispering, Kayla. It's over, Tess. You're free now. David stood nearby, his eyes soft with admiration. He had seen Tessa rise from the ashes, from a broken woman to a powerful, graceful survivor. Tessa wiped her tears, taking a deep breath. Tessa. My father. He believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. Lawyer. He always did. He said you were stronger than you knew. Tessa looked around the penthouse. The same place where her heart had been shattered months ago. It no longer felt like a prison. It was now a place of truth, of freedom. She sat down quietly, feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Her tears weren't just of pain anymore. They were tears of release. For years, Adrian had made her feel small, invisible, and powerless. But tonight, she realized something powerful. She didn't need him to feel whole. Tessa, whispering, he tried to break me. But my father gave me the strength to rebuild. David smiled gently. David. And you did. You rebuilt yourself, Tessa. That's the real victory. Tessa nodded slowly, a faint smile forming through her tears. The night outside was calm, the city lights glowing softly through the windows. Adrian's voice, his anger, his control, all of it was gone. Only Tessa remained free, strong, and finally at peace. Months later, Adrian was sentenced to prison. The trial made headlines everywhere. The same newspapers that once praised him now called him a fraud. Reporters wrote stories about how his wife, Tessa Moore, had quietly helped expose his crimes. They called her the silent backbone of Moore Holdings, the woman who built the empire from the shadows. But Tessa didn't care about fame or revenge. She only wanted peace. She sold her shares in the company and used part of the money to reopen her old dream, her interior design studio. The space was bright, calm, and filled with plants and sunlight. It was everything her old life wasn't. She began mentoring young women who had gone through toxic marriages or controlling relationships. Every week, she sat with them, shared her story, and reminded them that healing was possible. She also donated a large part of her wealth to build shelters for women escaping emotional and financial abuse. The shelters offered safety, therapy, and new skills, giving others the second chance she once prayed for. One afternoon, David visited her studio. He looked around, smiling at the calm colors and warm atmosphere. David, you've turned this place into something beautiful. Tessa, smiling, it's my piece. He handed her a folder. David, I'm starting a new project, a company focused on ethical design and fair trade. I want you as my partner. Tessa looked surprised. Tessa, partner? That's a big word. David, you've earned it. You know how to build things the right way, with heart. She thought for a moment. Working with David sounded right, honest and full of purpose. But she also knew what she needed most was time to grow on her own. Tessa, gently. David, I'm honored. But right now, I want to build something for myself first. I spent years living for someone else. I want to live for me. David nodded with understanding. David, then that's exactly what you should do. There was a quiet pause between them, not awkward but peaceful. Tessa, smiling, for the first time, I don't need saving. David, smiling back, you never did, Tessa. You just needed to remember who you are. As he left, sunlight streamed through the window, touching the sketches on her table, drawings of new homes, safe spaces, and bright designs. Tessa sat down, looking out at the city skyline. It used to remind her of everything she lost. Now it reminded her of everything she had gained: strength, freedom, and self-respect. She picked up her sketchbook and began to draw again, her lines confident and sure. For the first time in years, her hands didn't shake. In the background, a radio played a soft song about starting over. Tessa whispered to herself, "This is my beginning." And it truly was. Tessa walked through the quiet penthouse she once shared with Adrian. The rooms were empty now, no noise, no shouting, no pain. Only silence and the soft echo of her footsteps. The furniture was gone. The air smelled of fresh paint and freedom. She ran her fingers across the marble counter where so many arguments once began. Now it was just a cold stone, no longer holding any power over her. In her hand, she held her wedding ring. She looked at it for a long moment. That small circle that once represented love but later became a chain. With calm eyes, she placed it on the counter. She walked toward the large window. The city lights twinkled far below, alive and beautiful. It was the same view she used to stare at when she felt trapped, but tonight it looked different, wide open and full of possibility. As she watched the skyline, her voice filled the room softly, steady and sure. He said I was nothing without him, but losing him showed me I was everything without him. A gentle breeze moved through the open window. Tessa smiled, not out of joy but peace. She picked up her bag, turned off the lights, and walked toward the door. She paused once more, looking back, not with sadness, but with gratitude for how far she had come. Then she stepped out. Her heels clicked down the hallway, each step strong and certain. The door closed behind her with a quiet sound, like an ending that finally felt right. Outside, the city waited. The night air was cool, and the stars were bright. Tessa lifted her face toward the sky and whispered, "I'm free." And with that, she walked away, slow, graceful, and finally at peace with herself. Hi besties. Sparkling Heart, thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.